Hey, sixth grade. Well, it could be fifth grade and fourth grade. You guys can all watch it. But this is really a sixth grade lesson today. We're going to be talking about Alexander the Great, and we talked about him a little bit in school right before we got out of school. I know you guys watched the movie about Alexander the Great, and what you probably remember is that he's a great military leader, which is absolutely what he was. So we'll start off here. We got our ancient painting of Alexander the Great. You can tell immediately from the painting, the fact that he does not have a full beard. He's younger. A lot of the times we see ancient rulers mostly with full beards, and they're usually much older than he was when he became king. I think he was only 20 years old when he became king. So, anyway, let's go down here and get some information about him. Now, when Alexander the Great was growing up, he had a couple of big advantages that helped him when he became king later on in life. His first big advantage was Aristotle was his teacher. In sixth grade, if you think back to when we did the Greek philosophers, Aristotle was one of the most famous Greek philosophers of all. And Alexander the Great's father, whose name is King Philip II, made sure Alexander had the best possible teacher, and that was Aristotle. Alexander the Great is known for taking over the Persian Empire. That's what he's famous for. He's Alexander the Great, and that's in reference to him being a great military leader, a great conqueror. His dad was King Philip II of Macedonia, and King Philip wanted to take over the Persian Empire, but he knew that he didn't have a big enough army to make that happen. So he decided, hey, I'm just now, we're not talking about Alexander yet. We're talking about his dad now. Alexander the Great's father, King Philip II, decided, well, my army's not big enough to take on the Persian Empire, so I'm going to go and unite all of Greece and then take all of their armies, combine them with mine, and then I've got a force that could go take on the Persians. And so that's exactly what he does. King Philip has a massive war uniting all of Greece by defeating each of the city states. That war took place in 338 BC. Some of the city states did manage to band together to try to fight against him, but it was too little and too late. So King Philip ends up taking over all of Greece in 338 BC. And then he's immediately King Philip's immediately wanting to get his attack ready for the Persian Empire after that. But he's murdered. Nobody knows for sure exactly what happened to him, but based on the evidence that he took over all of Greece, there's probably a lot of Greek families that lost loved ones in that battle. And I think it's a safe bet to say that he was murdered by somebody from one of the Greek city states that had a father that died in the war, and they wanted revenge. And so King Philip gets murdered not long after taking over all of Greece. Then Alexander the Great takes over. He's only 20 years old, though. Now, the good thing about Alexander the Great taking over when he's only 20 was, well, I don't know if the good thing, but what helps him becoming a great military leader is not only was he, trained by Aristotle when he was growing up. When he was 16, he started going with his father, taking over all of Greece, and he even had command of some of the forces as a teenager. But he watched his dad a lot, and he learned from his father's military skills, and he built off of those, combining them with the knowledge he got from Aristotle, and that allowed him to become an incredible military leader. Here we've got a sculpture of Alexander the Great, also on horseback, just like the last one. And I think in this sculpture, he looks even younger than the first painting that we saw. But that just tells you that yes, he's only 20 years old when he becomes king, and he looks really young because he is young. So he wants to do what his dad was trying to do. He's going to take over his dad's idea to take over the Persian Empire. So he says, "Well, I've got a big enough army, but the Persian army is really big. What am I going to do to fight these guys?" And what Alexander the Great specialized in, he had a large cavalry, And cavalry, that's his mounted on horseback soldiers. He had a large number of soldiers on horseback. We spoke about this before, but a cavalry, what happens is, you line up several hundred horses in a row and send the, and these horses have a rider. There's riders on horseback, hundreds of them in lines, and they just charge at the enemy on horseback. And when they reach the enemy line, the enemy's on foot, and the horses literally trample over them. And then in ancient battle, if you're able to break an enemy's line, you can send, break through the enemy's line of troops, then you're able to, attack the enemy from the front, from behind, from the sides. If they, if their line doesn't hold, then the chances of them winning the battle go down dramatically. And so the horses would trample right through the line, and that would shatter the enemy line. It would break the enemy's will to fight, and it would kill a lot of people because horses weigh thousands of pounds and their hooves are like stone, and you get trampled and you don't survive. So Alexander the Great uses his army on horseback, and the whole army's not on horseback. Let me back that up. He uses his cavalry as a huge advantage, rips up the enemy lines, and then his troops come in afterward on foot and destroy the Persian army. So by 330, okay, so he starts his invasion of Persia in 334 BC, and by 331 BC, he's taken over all of Persia. So it took him 3 years, but he basically didn't have a lot of trouble winning these battles. But he doesn't stop there. He had 3 years of war. He goes over and sends his troops. They go to India, and they're having similar luck in India. They're winning the battle still, but at this point, his soldiers have been fighting nonstop war for 3 years. Well, more than 3 years if you count back to when they worked for his father and they were fighting Greece. And so these soldiers have been fighting for many years and they're tired. So the soldiers convince Alexander, hey, we've won enough battles, and so Alexander and his army head back to Greece. There's another sculpture of Alexander the Great. Just like everything else we've looked at, he looks very young. So, in conclusion, what Alexander the Great is famous for is taking over the Persian Empire, part of India, and when he does this, he's these areas he takes over become part of his empire, and so he's in charge of them. He's king of those areas, and this spreads Greek ideas, Greek philosophies, Greek architecture, Greek culture gets spread all over through Asia, and that's what he's really famous for. So you hear about Alexander the Great, you think great military leader trained by Aristotle, learned military tactics from his father when he was a teenager, became king at age 20, took over the Persian Empire and some of India, and spread Greek culture throughout the area. That's what he's famous for. Thanks for your time and listening. And that's Alexander the Great.